from a religion to a science, it seems, right?
Yeah,
We're really trying to
yeah,
move from this old school traditional and safety as a religion. That's the best way that I
yeah, yeah,
can and move it to something that might be a little bit more scientific and sensical, right?
yeah. Let's all worship at the altar of zero harm, and
Well,
uh,
that's so much what it feels like in some of these more
yeah,
traditional places, and that's where, and I think you and I have had some of this conversation on our last little bit of time together, where people get so angry at one another, especially
yeah,
within our profession, as we start to talk about doing anything different, and
yeah.
that seems to be much more true in that traditional sense. I don't mean to pick on those traditional folks that much. I know I pick
Sure.
on them a bunch and throw bricks in their direction. Um, but they really seem to cling to that same kind of position of when, okay, you challenged my personal beliefs. So now
Yeah,
that you've challenged my personal beliefs, I feel attacked.
yeah,
And no matter what you say, you're wrong, I'm right. And because zero is morally true and good and just, and that's what I'm sticking with. Right.
yeah.
And because I continue to see this zero debate everywhere. It seems like more so now, which I
It
think is good.
is.
Let me say I think that's good before we go too much
Yeah,
farther, because people are now talking about it. We used to not challenge those things.
it
What,
is.
what do
And
you
look,
what do you think about that?
look, I get that. I get their thinking around that because it is spoken about a lot. But I actually do see that as a good thing. I posted something yesterday from the book about zero harm. And again, not to punish in any way those who have that as a goal. I believe, and this is where I'm different, say, to Dr. Rob Long, who, he wrote that book. What the hell was it called? For the Love of Zero. And he smashes anybody that believes in zero harm, and he calls them all manner of names. And for me, it's not like that. I honestly believe companies, generally speaking, who've put zero in place as a goal, did so with a genuine intent.
Right.
For no negative reasons. The reason I think it's still very much worthy of talking about is, again, moving away from the religion into the science. And the science simply says this: there is no evidence that a goal of zero does any good, and yet there is some evidence that it actually is associated with increased serious injuries and fatalities.
Right.
And so I'm purely doing this from a research-based background. Having a goal of zero is very unlikely to do any good, but it is possibly linked to increased injuries and fatalities. Now, that's why I think it's worth talking about.
Right.
Uh, not from any ideological or philosophical view.
Right.
Just again, we're talking about doing safety better. Doing safety better probably means getting rid of goals like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where the challenge is interesting, because when you start to have those conversations, folks are very quick to, when you challenge those things, or they have been, they're very quick to say, well, you just don't care. You just want people to get
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah.
If
How
you
many
don't if you
injuries
don't
is
espouse
okay?
zero, right? If you don't espouse
Yeah.
zero, how many injuries are okay then? Exactly. They kind of cross their arms and go, well, how many injuries are
Yeah.
okay?
I mean, it's like just because maybe I'm against the war on drugs doesn't mean I'm pro addiction.
Right. Yeah. It's exactly.
It's just,
It's such a That's such a great example. Exactly. Just because I'm against locking people in cages for what they do to their own bodies, doesn't necessarily mean I'm pro crack. Right?
exactly right. And that's where this whole thing gets a little bit confused, you
Yeah.
know.
It gets into a little bit of a gray area.
And you bang on. I mean, a lot of not resistance, but some people are giving feedback that, the new way, the new view, hop, safety differently, whatever you want to call that, somehow means they've got to stop doing everything they're currently doing. It's this or it's this. It's very polarized. And to me, it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
It's in fact, you'll keep doing much of what you are still doing. You'll just start doing it maybe differently by bringing your teams in more,
Yeah.
by actually listening more to your crews. And the more you do that, the more you build those relationships and trust, everything you're currently doing can start getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, I think, almost we're organically then moving towards doing safety differently and safety two. It's not like you have to just, get the safety two users manual and chuck everything else out.
Right.
This is
Right.
just doing it better by bringing your crews in.
Exactly. It's just a different overarching approach altogether.
Yeah.
And that's really what how I try to share it with people that much, because there's always the fear that safety, that our kind of evolution of safety gets turned into just another program, right? And that's obviously not what we're shooting for here when
No,
we're talking about doing safety better or safety different. And I totally agree with you. That's why as we kind of mentioned, I shy away from I love safety differently. That's what I would prefer to use. But
yeah, same.
all the terms are almost they're so polarizing at this point, whether we're saying hop, whether we're saying the new view, safety two, everything means something just slightly different. Right.
It
And
does.
that's where I kind of throw myself out there and just say safety better, because I look at all that stuff almost as a buffet more than than
Yeah,
anything else, right? You
yeah,
should be digging into all those bits and pieces, right? There's valuable stuff in all of those things. So I think it is important for folks to not get too hung up on just the kind of the naming convention of what we're doing here, right?
totally. And I heard an interview with John Green recently, who I've got a lot of time for. And he said, in terms of hop, safety differently, safety two, you could barely get a cigarette paper between them.
Yeah.
In many ways, they're very similar. And yeah, I wrote an article about this recently. It's up on the Safety Differently website. I also think the various names can be a little bit off-putting to the very people who need to be reading this stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than academics or people like ourselves and commentators, the average safety manager out there, he doesn't really care what you call it. He doesn't care if he's doing hop, safety differently, safety. He just wants to know what he can do better.